The wind moved slowly across the silent graveyard, dust rising in soft waves under the pale red sun. The man stood alone, his hands shaking slightly as he placed fresh white flowers on the dark stone. His eyes heavy, his voice quiet, his heart broken. He whispered her name, the name he had spoken every day when she was alive. The name that now felt sharp on his tongue, he whispered again, slower, softer, as if he feared even the air might carry it away. The colony around him was quiet. No children laughing, no traders shouting, no workers calling to each other. Only the cold whisper of the wind across empty ground. It was a silence that pressed against his ears, making him feel more alone than ever before. She had been the light of his life, his partner, his guide, the one who made the harsh colony world feel like home. But now she was gone, taken from him in a sudden night of fire and screaming, taken when creatures no one had ever seen before attacked and vanished as quickly as they came, leaving only smoke and sorrow behind. He remembered her final smile, the way she had looked at him just before the chaos began. He remembered holding her hand as the alarm sirens wailed. He remembered the heat, the burning, and then the stillness when her body no longer moved. He had buried her himself, his hands numb, his tears endless, each handful of soil heavy as if the world was punishing him for letting her go. He had stood here every day since, unable to leave, unable to accept. Now one last time he had come to say goodbye. "I will never forget you," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I will carry you in every step, in every breath, until my last day." His knees felt weak. The stone in front of him blurred as tears filled his eyes again. He pressed his forehead against the grave, whispering words only his heart understood. Above him the sky shifted, the strange colors of the alien sun washing the land in a crimson glow. Shadows stretched long and twisted, the air cold against his skin, the moment heavy with finality. For a long time he did not move. The world around him felt frozen. Time itself seemed to hesitate, as if waiting for his last word. Then at last, with shaking hands, he brushed the dust from the stone and stood, his body heavy, his shoulders bent, his heart aching as if it had been cut open again. He turned slowly, ready to leave, ready to walk away into the emptiness of his days, when he felt it. A touch, light, gentle, almost nothing but real. On his shoulder, his body froze. The world seemed to stop breathing, his eyes wide, his chest tight, his heart pounding so hard it hurt. No one was here, no one should have been near. No one could touch him in this lonely graveyard, and yet, the weight of a hand pressed against his shoulder. Warm, alive, human. His mind screamed it was impossible. His reason told him it was madness. But his heart, oh his heart, it knew that touch. It remembered every line of her hand, every warmth of her skin. Slowly, terrified, trembling, he turned, and what he saw made his breath vanish from his lungs. There, standing only a step away, was her, pale against the fading sun, her hair moving in the wind, her eyes wide with confusion, her lips parting as if searching for words. She looked at him as if she had just woken from a dream, as if she had never left, as if death had been nothing more than a shadow she had walked through. His lips shook, his voice breaking as the impossible truth formed. How? But before he could finish, before his mind could shape the thought, she whispered his name, her voice soft, her breath real, her eyes filled with something between fear and love. And in that moment the man understood nothing. He only knew one thing: she was alive, or at least, something that looked exactly like her was alive. Behind them, the wind carried dust in quiet swirls. The grave lay silent, the flowers still fresh, the stone still marked, yet the woman whose name was carved there stood breathing, her hand still resting on his shoulder. The world seemed to shiver, the silence no longer empty but heavy with questions, heavy with dread, heavy with the weight of something far beyond human understanding. His heart wanted to run into her arms, his soul wanted to believe this was a miracle. But his mind whispered dark thoughts, thoughts he could not ignore, because no one returns from the grave. And if she had, then something was very, very wrong. The man's breath came fast, his hands cold, his eyes locked on the impossible figure before him. The graveyard suddenly felt smaller, the sky darker, the shadows longer. The farewell he had spoken only moments ago was not the end. It was the beginning of something he could not yet imagine, something that would change not only his life, but the fate of every human who had ever dared to call the stars their home. And as she stood before him, alive, trembling, whispering his name, the question rose in his mind like a shadow over the sun. Was she really the woman he loved? Or was she something else, something wearing her face? Something that had come back from the grave for reasons he was not meant to understand. The wind carried no answer. The silence gave no mercy. Only the touch of her hand remained, warm and real, burning against his skin as the world shifted forever. The man could not breathe, his throat tight, his chest heavy, his mind screaming at him that what he saw was not possible. Yet his eyes refused to lie. The woman he had buried with his own hands was standing before him, her skin pale, her eyes full of confusion, her lips trembling as she whispered his name. His body shook, every muscle frozen between fear and longing. His heart racing like a storm trapped in a cage. He wanted to run, he wanted to hold her. He wanted to wake up and discover this was only a dream. Yet the hand on his shoulder burned with warmth. Real warmth, not memory, not imagination. She looked around slowly, her gaze moving across the graveyard, her breath uneven, her voice soft. Where am I? The sound of her words cut through the silence like a blade, each syllable sharp, each breath heavy with impossible weight. The man's lips moved, his voice almost breaking. You're not supposed to be here, he whispered. I buried you, I saw you die. Her eyes filled with confusion, she touched her own chest as if trying to remember, then shook her head slowly. I don't remember, she said, her voice faint. I remember light, so much light, and then nothing. The world seemed to sway around him, the sky shifting, the shadows bending, his mind desperate to find reason but finding none. No science, no faith, no logic could explain this moment. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed behind them. Armored soldiers rushing into the graveyard, weapons raised, their visors glowing, their voices sharp. Step back, one shouted, his tone hard. Move away from her. The man turned, his hands raised. Wait, she's alive, he cried. She's real, but the soldiers hesitated. Their weapons steady, their faces hidden, their fear clear. One of them whispered into his calm, his words low but carried in the cold air. This should not be possible. The scans confirmed her death, another soldier muttered. Then what is she? The woman looked at them, her body trembling, her eyes wide like a frightened child. She whispered again, I don't understand. Why are they pointing at me? The man stepped closer to her, shielding her with his own body. She's not a threat, he said firmly, his voice breaking with both fear and anger. She's human. She's my wife. The soldiers did not lower their weapons, their fingers tight on the triggers, their fear stronger than his words. Then something strange happened. Her body shivered. Her eyes rolled back for a second, and from her lips came a sound. Not words, not human speech, but a deep tone, like 1,000 voices whispering through her mouth, a language that none of them had ever heard. Ancient and alien, cold and sharp. The soldiers stepped back in terror. One of them shouted, She's infected, another cried. She's not human. The man froze, his eyes wide, his heart torn in two. Because he had heard it too. The sound was not hers. It was not the voice of the woman he knew. It was something else, something inside her, something beyond her. When the sound faded, she collapsed to her knees, gasping for breath, tears streaming down her face. I don't know what's happening to me, she cried. Please believe me, I don't understand. The man dropped beside her, holding her in his arms. I believe you, he whispered. Though deep inside fear ate at him, the soldiers moved closer, their captain's voice sharp. We're taking her in. Now no, the man shouted, his arms tightening around her. She needs help, not chains. She's a risk to everyone, the captain replied coldly. If she's carrying alien technology, if she's been changed, she could destroy us all. The woman clung to the man's chest, her body shaking, her eyes pleading. Don't let them take me, please. The man looked at her, then at the soldiers, then back at her again, his mind a storm, his heart breaking. He knew they would not stop. He knew they would drag her away, and yet he also knew he could not let her go. Not after losing her once already. He stood, his hands raised, his voice strong. Then I'm going with her. The soldiers hesitated, their weapons still pointed, their orders clear, but none of them wanted to be the first to move. None of them wanted to touch the woman who had returned from the grave. The captain gave a sharp order, secure them both, and in moments, cold steel cuffs locked around their wrists, drones buzzing above their heads, scanners whirring as they were led out of the graveyard, the man's heart heavy, the woman's eyes filled with fear. As they were taken through the colony streets, whispers spread like fire, people gathering, pointing, gasping. Some falling to their knees, some running in terror. She came back, they whispered. She returned from the dead. Others shouted darker words. She is not human, she is a sign, she is a weapon. The man kept his eyes forward, his hands bound, her trembling fingers brushing against his. He whispered low so only she could hear. No matter what they say, no matter what they do, I will not leave you again. But even as he spoke, doubt grew in his chest, because he could still hear the echo of that alien voice, still feel the chill of words not meant for human ears, still wonder if the woman he held was truly the one he had buried. And in the shadows above, unseen by the soldiers, unseen by the people, a dark shape moved across the clouds, silent and watching, as if something beyond the stars was waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. The impossible had happened, she had returned, but with her return had come a question greater than life or death. Was she a miracle or a warning? The medical facility smelled of steel and antiseptic, its walls bright white, its lights humming softly above. The man sat by her bed, his wrists still marked from the cuffs, his eyes fixed on her pale face, his heart pulled between joy and dread. She lay on the bed with wires running into her skin, scanners floating around her body, humming with soft light. Doctors and scientists moved like restless shadows, whispering to one another, their eyes wide with both curiosity and fear. Her chest rose and fell, slow and steady. Her lips moved now and then, words spilling out, not in English, not in any human tongue, but in that strange whispering language, a sound that made the air itself seem colder. The man leaned closer. "Please," he whispered. "It's me, it's your husband, remember me." Her eyes flickered open, wide and shining, confusion filling them, then warmth, then fear. I remember you," she whispered, her hand trembling as she reached for him. "But I also remember something else." He held her hand, his grip gentle. "What do you mean?" Her gaze turned distant, her voice soft. Voices, thousands of voices speaking inside me. Sometimes I don't understand them. Sometimes I do. They talk about stars, about war, about something coming. The doctors rushed closer, their devices beeping. One of them whispered, "Energy patterns in her cells are beyond anything recorded. It's not natural. It's not human." Another scientist adjusted the scanner, shaking his head. "It looks like she's carrying data, as if information itself was written into her blood." The man's heart sank, his grip tightening around her hand. "She's not a test subject, she's a person," he shouted, his voice echoing in the sterile room. The lead doctor turned, his eyes sharp. "We are not blind. We know she was dead. We know you buried her. Now she lies alive before us. And she speaks in a language no human knows. Tell me, how can we treat her as normal?" The woman flinched at the words, tears in her eyes. "I didn't choose this," she whispered. "I didn't ask for this." The man wiped her tears, his voice soft. "You are still you. No matter what they say, you are mine." But even as he spoke, her eyes shifted again, glowing faintly, a light so unnatural it made the soldiers guarding the room step back. The doctors gasped. The machines around her spiked with energy, then suddenly went dark. The lights in the entire facility flickered, the hum of power fading for a heartbeat, then returning with a low groan, silence heavy in the air. The lead scientist stared at her, whispering, "She's connected to something bigger." The man felt it too, the strange pull in the room, the way her very breath seemed to bend the air. Her presence no longer just human, but something else, something vast. Later that night, when the facility grew quiet, when the guards outside shifted uneasily in their posts, the man sat by her bed again, whispering softly, "Tell me what you remember. Tell me the truth." Her eyes opened, glowing faintly in the dark, her voice barely more than a breath. "I remember dying, the pain fading, my vision turning to black then. I was pulled, lifted into light, voices around me. Not cruel, not kind, just endless. They showed me stars I've never seen. They told me things no human should know, then they sent me back." "Sent you back," the man repeated, his skin cold. "Why?" Her eyes filled with sorrow. "I don't know, but I feel it inside me. They didn't return me as I was. They changed me. They filled me with something. And now it whispers. It whispers even when I try to sleep." He held her hand tighter, his voice desperate. "But you're still you. I can see it in your eyes." She shook her head slowly. "Am I? Or am I just a shell carrying their message?" The man could not answer, his heart breaking with the weight of her words. From the hallway, voices rose, angry and fearful, some shouting that she must be destroyed, others arguing she must be studied, no one agreeing she should be free. Through the glass window, people pressed their faces, watching her like an exhibit, some whispering prayers, some spitting curses, some simply staring in silence. The man turned, fury burning inside him, but when he looked back at her, he saw something that chilled him more than their hatred. Her lips moved again, the strange language spilling out, her voice layered, as if more than one being spoke through her. The machines around her flickered on by themselves, their screens glowing with unknown symbols, patterns of stars, maps of galaxies, warnings in languages no one had ever seen. One scientist shouted, "She's transmitting," another whispered, "No, she's receiving." The man's breath caught, his eyes wide, because in her voice, through the alien whispers, he heard something else. A word that should not have been possible. A word in English hidden among the unknown. Soon, she collapsed back against the bed, her eyes closing, her breath weak, her hand falling limp in his. The man sat frozen, the whispers echoing in his head. The machines glowing with alien stars, the soldiers tightening their grips on their weapons, and in the darkness of the colony sky above, far beyond human sight, something stirred, something vast and waiting. The whispers of the unknown had begun, and humanity would never be the same again. The facility was never quiet again, ever since the night the machines lit up with alien maps and her voice carried whispers not of this world. The place felt less like a hospital and more like a cage, guards at every corner, scientists recording every twitch of her eyes, every flicker of her breath. The man sat beside her as always, his chair pulled close, his hand wrapped around hers, his gaze never leaving her face. He was tired, his eyes red from sleepless nights, but he refused to move, refused to let her face the stares of strangers alone. She opened her eyes slowly, her voice weak but steady. "They keep watching me," she whispered. "Like I am not real. Like I am something built, not born. You are real," the man said firmly, though deep in his chest the same fear twisted like a blade. He wanted to believe it with all his soul, but the whispers that sometimes slipped from her lips were not human. The glow in her eyes was not human. The lead scientist entered, holding a tablet filled with strange readings, his face pale, his voice tense. "We have confirmed something," he said, his gaze flicking between her and the man. "She carries knowledge, data not of this world. It is coded into her very blood, into her cells, like a living library." The man frowned. "Knowledge." The scientist nodded. "Star maps, advanced technology, even equations we cannot solve, it is all there, as if she has become a vessel of something greater." The woman turned her head slowly, fear and sadness in her eyes. "I don't want their knowledge. I only want my life back." But the scientist stepped closer, his eyes burning with a mix of fear and greed. "Do you not understand? This is beyond miracle. This is a weapon or a gift. If we unlock it, humanity could leap forward 1,000 years overnight." The man rose to his feet, his voice sharp. "She is not a tool, she is not your experiment." The scientist met his anger with coldness. "And yet she is not fully human anymore." "Is she?" The words stabbed the air like knives. Silence falling heavy, the woman's breath catching, her eyes closing as if the truth was a weight she could not bear. Later, when the lights dimmed and the facility grew quiet, the man leaned close to her, his voice soft. "You are still you. You are still the woman I love, no matter what they say." She looked at him with trembling eyes, her lips parting. "But am I truly? When I close my eyes, I hear them. When I breathe, I feel them. When I dream, I see stars no human has ever touched. I am not only me anymore." Her words cut him deeper than any blade, because in her voice was not only fear, but truth. The next morning the whispers grew louder, not only inside her but across the colony, rumors spreading like fire. Some said she was chosen by gods, others said she was a demon wearing human skin. Some fell to their knees and prayed at the gates of the facility. Others shouted that she must be destroyed before she brought doom. Inside the lab, more tests were run, more scans taken. And then came the moment that changed everything. As the scanners moved across her body, symbols appeared on the screen. Symbols no human language had ever known. But she looked at them and whispered softly, "I can read this." The room froze, the scientist staring at her in shock, the man gripping her hand tighter. "What does it say?" he asked carefully. Her eyes glowed faintly, her lips moving slowly. "It says, 'The test begins.'" The scientists exchanged fearful glances. One muttered, "Test? What test?" Another whispered, "Are we the ones being judged?" The man felt the ground beneath his feet shift, his heart pounding. "What else does it say?" Her breath came fast, her voice trembling. "It speaks of choice, it speaks of fire, it speaks of worlds that rose and worlds that fell, and it says humanity stands at the edge." The lead scientist staggered back, his face pale. "She is not just carrying knowledge. She is carrying a message. The man pulled her closer, his voice rough. And what are you? Are you still my wife? Or are you their messenger? Tears slid down her face, her voice breaking. I don't know. I don't know anymore. The silence that followed was heavier than chains. That night, when the guards outside whispered among themselves, when the scientists argued in hushed voices, the man sat awake beside her, watching her sleep, listening to the faint alien tones that slipped from her lips as she dreamed, tones that bent the lights, tones that made the machines flicker. He wanted to believe in her. He wanted to believe she was still the woman he had loved. But in the deepest corner of his mind, another thought grew, cold and relentless. Perhaps she was never meant to return. Perhaps she had been sent back not for him, not for love, but for something far greater, something that might break the world. And above, far beyond the sky and the endless black, ships that no human eye had seen drifted silently, watching, waiting as if the message had already reached them. The hidden truth was no longer hidden. It was alive, breathing, walking in the form of the woman he loved. And the real question was not what she was, but what humanity would do now that she had returned. The colony had changed. It was no longer the busy outpost it once was, no longer filled with the sound of trade and laughter. Now it was filled with whispers, with fear, with arguments that echoed through the streets. People gathered in groups outside the facility. Some carried candles, kneeling in the dust as if she was a holy figure, their voices soft with prayers. They spoke of her return as proof that humanity had been chosen. They called her a messenger, a savior, but others shouted curses, their faces twisted with anger. They carried weapons, stones, anything they could find. They called her a curse, a demon, a danger that must be removed before it destroyed them all. Inside the walls of the facility, the tension grew even heavier. The guards no longer stood steady. They shifted uneasily, glancing at her through the glass. Some crossed themselves in silent faith. Others tightened their grips on their rifles, ready to fire if she so much as moved. The man stayed close to her, never leaving her side. His love and his fear battling inside him every hour. Every breath he saw how the world looked at her now. Not as a woman, not as a person, but as something else. Something too great, too dangerous. She sat on the edge of her bed, her hands trembling, her eyes hollow with sorrow. They hate me, she whispered. They fear me. The man knelt in front of her, holding her hands tight. They don't know you, they don't see you. They only see what they fear. Her eyes glistened with tears. But what if they are right? The man's chest tightened, but before he could answer, the door slid open and the colony's military commander stepped inside, his face stern, his voice cold. We cannot allow this to continue. The man rose quickly, anger flashing. She has done nothing. The commander's eyes narrowed. Nothing. She speaks in tongues that are not human. Machines bend to her presence. The people riot in the streets because of her, and you dare say she has done nothing. She is alive, the man shouted. She is human. The commander's voice grew sharper. Is she, or is she a vessel for something else? Something that will use her to break us? The woman flinched at the words, turning her face away, shame and sorrow written in her every breath. The commander placed a tablet on the table, its screen showing images from orbit, faint readings of massive shapes moving in the dark. Something is out there, he said grimly, and we believe it is connected to her return. If we do nothing, the colony may not survive. The man's blood turned cold, his voice trembling. Ships, the commander nodded. Silent, waiting, watching. They have not attacked, not yet, but they are here. And they are here because of her. The woman's voice cracked, her eyes wide with pain. They follow me, she whispered. I feel them in my dreams. They wait for me. The room fell into silence, broken only by the hum of the machines outside. The crowd roared, chants of prayer mixing with cries for destruction, faith clashing with fear, humanity divided at its core. The commander's voice cut through the noise, hard and merciless. She will be detained under full military control. From this moment forward, her freedom ends. She is not to step outside without my order. She is not to breathe without my permission. No, the man shouted, his body trembling with rage. You will not cage her. She is not your prisoner. The guards stepped forward, rifles raised, but the woman lifted her hand weakly, her voice soft. Please don't. The man looked at her, his eyes burning. They cannot take you, I won't let them. Tears slipped down her cheeks, her voice shaking. If I fight them, they will only fear me more. If I resist, they will call me a monster. The commander signaled the guards, and chains of light wrapped around her wrists. Glowing restraints designed for dangerous criminals, she lowered her head. Silent, broken. The man cried out, his voice raw. She is not your enemy. But the commander only looked at him coldly. Then pray she never becomes one. That night, the man sat outside her holding cell, his back against the cold wall, listening to the muffled sound of her sobbing. His fists clenched, his heart heavy with helplessness. He could hear the whispers of the colony through the vents. Endless voices debating her fate, some begging for mercy, others demanding her execution. Fear spreading like a poison through every corner of human life. And still above the ships remained, silent shadows against the stars. As he sat in the dark, the man whispered to himself, "They will never understand, they will never see her as I do." But even as he spoke, he felt the same doubt pressing against his own heart. He could not deny what he had seen, the glow in her eyes, the language on her lips, the way machines bent to her presence. He loved her, but he feared her too, and in that quiet moment, as the colony trembled with fear and the stars above filled with watchers unseen, the woman's voice drifted through the silence, soft, broken, but carrying words that sent a chill down his spine. They will never understand what is coming. The colony was no longer a home. It was a battlefield of voices of fear and faith colliding in every street. Soldiers patrolled with rifles raised, crowds chanted in anger or knelt in worship. The woman was no longer just a person. She had become a symbol, a spark that split humanity into pieces. And then, the sky changed. At first it was only a shadow on the scanners, faint readings, a cold presence beyond the stars. But soon it grew clearer, undeniable, vast ships sliding into orbit, silent giants blocking the light of the sun. The alarms wailed. People poured into the streets, some screaming, some falling to their knees, some raising weapons at the sky as if their bullets could reach the heavens. The commanders shouted orders, the soldiers prepared defenses. But in their eyes there was only fear. Inside her cell she stood at the window, her pale face lit by the glow of the massive shapes above, her voice soft, trembling. "They are here!" The man rushed to her side, gripping the bars. "Who are they? What do they want?" She turned to him, her eyes glowing faintly, her lips quivering. "They want me!" The man's heart sank, his voice breaking. "Why? Because I am their message," she whispered. "Because I carry their test." The door burst open. The commander stormed in, his voice hard as steel. "Prepare her. She will be moved immediately. Those ships are not here by chance." The man stepped in front of her, his arms wide, his voice shaking with rage. "She is not yours to give." The commander's eyes narrowed. "This is not about you, this is about survival. If handing her over keeps them from destroying us, then so be it." The woman shook her head, tears in her eyes. "It will not save you. They did not come for surrender. They came for judgment." Her words fell like stone in the room, the silence heavy. The commander's face twisted with disbelief. "Judgment," he spat. "Nonsense," but the man saw the truth in her eyes. He felt it in the cold silence of the ships above, something vast and patient, something that had been waiting. That night, locked in the same cell, the man held her close, her head resting against his chest, his voice trembling. "Tell me what they want. Tell me what I must do." Her eyes opened slowly, glowing like distant stars, her voice barely a whisper. "They want to see if humanity is worthy, if we can rise or if we will fall like so many before us. I am their bridge, but I cannot walk it alone." His throat tightened, his heart heavy. "You mean—" "I must choose," she nodded, her tears glistening. "Yes, if you stand with me, I will lead you to them. But it will mean standing against your own people. They will call you traitor. They will hate you. But if you stand against me, if you choose them, then the test will end, and humanity will face its fate without me." The man closed his eyes, his mind a storm, two paths stretching before him, both filled with fire, both filled with loss. Outside, the colony shook with fear, ships blotting out the stars, shadows stretching across the world, the voices of the people rising. "Destroy her!" some screamed. "Save us!" others cried. "Trust her!" whispered the few who dared to believe. The commander made his move. Troops filled the halls, orders given to transport her to the surface where a weapon had been prepared. A desperate weapon meant to blast a signal of refusal into the skies, a final stand against the unknown. The man broke from the guards, his voice loud, fierce, echoing through the corridors. "No," he shouted. "You are blind. You are marching toward your own destruction." The soldiers raised their rifles. The commander's voice thundered. Stand aside or die. But before they could fire, the woman raised her hand, her eyes burning bright, her voice echoing not in sound but in the very air. Layered, infinite, enough. The walls shook. The lights flickered. The weapons in the soldiers' hands powered down, their rifles dropping uselessly to the floor, the silence heavy as her voice carried through every corridor. You must choose, she said, her gaze fixed on the man, her words soft but louder than any command. Them or me. The man's chest heaved. His heart breaking, he looked at the faces around him, soldiers frozen in fear, scientists trembling, people watching through the glass. And then he turned back to her, the woman he had buried, the woman who had returned, the woman who carried the voice of stars. His hand trembled, his voice cracked. If I choose you, what becomes of them? Her eyes filled with sorrow. That is the test, that is the price. Humanity must rise through fire or fall into silence. The ships above shifted, beams of light glowing faintly across their dark hulls. The world itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting, watching. The man's heart pounded, his soul torn in two, love pulling him one way, duty pulling him another, faith and fear colliding inside him. And as he stood in the silence, the universe waiting for his choice, he understood one truth. There would be no turning back. The colony held its breath, the sky above glowing with the silent shapes of alien ships, vast shadows that blocked the stars, their presence heavy, their silence louder than any weapon. Inside the facility, the man stood between soldiers, scientists and the woman he loved, his heart pounding, his body trembling, his soul burning with the weight of the choice before him. She stood in chains of light, her eyes glowing faintly, her face pale but calm, her voice soft yet carrying through the room. They are waiting. They will not move until we decide. The commander's voice cracked like a whip. There is no decision. She is a threat. We end her now. We end this madness. The man's voice rose sharp with fury. If you kill her, you kill us all. The soldiers aimed their rifles, tension crackling like fire. The people outside pressed against the windows, their faces filled with fear, some shouting for her death, others begging for her salvation. Humanity divided by the weight of one impossible woman. The man stepped forward, his eyes locked on hers. Tell me the truth, he whispered, his voice breaking. What are you? Are you still here? Or are you something else? She looked at him, tears filling her eyes, her voice trembling. I am both. I am the woman you loved, and I am their messenger. They took me when I died. They filled me with their knowledge. They returned me not to live, but to deliver. His throat tightened, his chest heavy. Deliver what? Her gaze grew distant, her voice layered, echoing with voices not her own. A choice. Humanity stands at the edge. Join us and rise into the stars, or resist us and fall into silence. This world, this colony, your people, all of them. The test begins now. The commander spat, his hand raised to give the order. Enough of this. She is not human. She is an infection. Open fire. But before the words could finish, the lights died, the walls shook. The ceiling vibrated with the low hum of the alien ships above. Beams of light poured down through the clouds, golden and cold, wrapping the colony in their glow. Every voice went silent. Every weapon lowered, every breath caught. The world itself seemed frozen. The woman's chains dissolved into sparks, falling from her wrists like dust. She stepped forward, her eyes glowing brighter, her voice carrying through the walls, through the streets, through every ear and every heart. We do not come to conquer, she said. We come to test. Humanity must prove itself, and through me, the answer will be given. The man stood trembling, his soul torn apart. The soldiers looked to their commander. The commander looked to the sky, but no order came. No command could be spoken in the face of such power. The woman reached out her hand, her gaze fixed on the man, her eyes soft, human, filled with love. Walk with me, she whispered. Stand with me, and I will lead them to mercy. Without you, they will see only war. His hand shook, his breath uneven. He thought of the woman he had buried, the laughter they had shared, the love they had built. He thought of the alien voice that sometimes spoke through her, the power that bent machines to her will. He thought of the people outside, divided and afraid, of the ships above waiting for his answer. If he chose her, he would stand against his own people, branded a traitor, hated, feared. But humanity might be saved. If he chose them, he would lose her forever, and perhaps bring fire from the sky. The silence stretched long, endless, every eye upon him, every breath waiting. At last he lifted his hand, his fingers trembling, and placed it in hers, her eyes filled with tears, her lips trembling with both joy and sorrow. Then it begins, she whispered. The ground shook, the beams of light shifted. The sky split with energy. The ships above glowing like suns. The people outside fell to their knees, crying out in fear and awe. The commander shouted orders, but his words were lost in the roar of the heavens. The scientists screamed, the soldiers froze. No human voice could rise above the power that filled the air. The woman and the man stood together, their hands clasped, her voice rising, layered with thousands of voices, human and not. Humanity has chosen, the ships answered, their lights flaring. Their voices booming not in sound but in thought, words pressed into every mind, every soul. Then humanity shall be tested. The world trembled. The colony bathed in light, and for the first time in history, humanity stood not as rulers of their own fate, but as students before something far greater. The man held her hand tighter, his heart breaking, his soul burning, because he knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning. The final revelation was not that she had returned, not that she was alive again, but that she had come carrying the fate of an entire species, and through her humanity would rise or humanity would fall. And as the alien fleet lit the sky brighter than 1,000 suns, the man whispered one last truth to himself. We are not alone and we are not ready.